All right, welcome back to another episode here on Divine Ethereal Beings. I am excited to do this one. It's just sort of been one of those topics that just sort of popped up in the last couple of days, which is prophecies. Um, I thought it was an interesting terminology to sort of have coming out, kind of emerging in the year of 2026 and all the things that seem to be already sort of quote unquote going on. So I thought we would kind of have a little bit of a conversation about prophecies and see. Well, I'm just going to present to you sort of my understandings from, an energetic level and all the things as well. And then, of course, always take what resonates, leave what doesn't. If you enjoy these and you want to get notifications, please subscribe. That's the best and fastest way for you to get notified when we drop new videos. So please do that. It helps us out a lot too. And yeah, if you're interested in joining the membership, there's more information in the description below. So, yeah, prophecies is such a fascinating term to, I think, have had come up for right now. I think 2026 was such a big year in the sense of everybody sort of knew there was big things sort of coming and things shifting and changing. And I think that the word prophecy sort of started to evolve more around 2026 and 27, maybe more so because of the big energy shifts and all the things that people could feel coming. It's just like, how do we term that as human to make sense of it, right? So let's kind of go back to a little bit more of the basics on that because prophecy is just another word for like prediction or some people term it as when they hear prophecy, oh, it's like an oracle or a seer or someone that was, psychic or well, no one could see the future, was predicting a timeline for the future. And now I am going to go into a little bit more of why I just said timeline as well, because for me, in my understanding of timelines, it's pretty hard to predict the future like 100% because you can't. It's all probability, it's all down to timelines. So we'll talk a little bit more into that as well. But just staying a little bit more surface level right now, but just in the general term of prophecy. So, that's where some people term it right away and think psychic or prophet in that way of being able to see futuristic things. And then, of course, if you have a little bit more of an understanding of religion or that kind of background that you grew up in, a prophet can often mean, that person within religion that has, spoken to God or spoken to their deity that they worship or whatever it might be. And they'll kind of bring forth like an information of saying, well, I was told this as a prophecy from God, or, those kinds of terms. And still it's a prediction, but it can feel a little different, right? Because it's sort of termed in a way that it's not, it's got a real set of boundaries and rules that come with that one sometimes when it comes to the the religious state of when you call a prophet. And so it sort of gives that singular person often a lot of power to say like whatever is kind of coming from them must be truth, whereas if your term or your resonancy is more with just the factor of someone like Baba Vanga, she was, turned back from in the later 1800s, where she really became more known for her psychic abilities and being able to predict, futuristic things. And I mean, if you go on the internet, I'm sure you can still find, I believe it's almost I think the term and prediction she originally had from way back then was up to 5079, I believe is when it said she kind of predicted the world might end. Now, of course, that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean a poof, we're gone kind of ending, but at the same point, that her predictions were very far, quote, into the future. So she had lots of predictions that have come true since her death, even. She passed in the 1990s. And so a lot of what she has been told has sort of been written down and carried forward in a way as we continue on through time. So Baba Vanga is also known as one of those very deep prophetic type of people because she was making all these predictions about the collective and futuristic things, so she called and termed out 9/11 and those kinds of really big events, and there's a few others on the list. So I would suggest if you're curious about Baba Vanga to go and look into that because some of it is kind of interesting to see how on point she was with certain things. But that's the thing, it's certain things because there are certain stuff in there too that some people have compiled from the prophecies that she had sort of given back in those times. And I mean, she was completely blind, so obviously she wasn't writing these down. She was just speaking in the way that she spoke. And I know that sometimes they can sound very cryptic as well. I mean, prophecies, you also kind of think of like I instantaneously went back to Percy Jackson, where they would get, their quest, and it was always pertain to prophecy with this quest. And yet that prophecy was very cryptic. It was never a very straightforward thing to just be interpreted to say exactly, this or that. And I know that Baba Vanga was sort of in the same way. I mean, you have to think of terminology for her back in those days, trying to speak of things futuristic that we wouldn't even have terms or words for necessarily, to bring forth, a vision would sound very cryptic. Of course it would, because she doesn't have the terminology that we might be using, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years down the road, right? So at that point, she's trying to best describe how this energy feels or seems to her, or her own analogies that were sort of given to help make sense of it. But again, that was at a point in time that those analogies were being used from that type of language. So of course it's going to sound kind of cryptic if we're looking further into some of those predictions down the line. And we're like, well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Well, sometimes they're not supposed to, because the interpretation of them comes back to that reality shift and those reality timelines and the things that exist. So when we are speaking of prophecy, I think it's important to remember, like, no prediction is ever 100%, of course, because when people are gaining, these drop-ins or this knowledge, or, even when I do energy, updates for the months or the years, I am consistently just tapping into frequency and energy that is the strongest probability of actually sort of showing up, right? So I'm not telling you exactly what that reality is going to look like, because I don't know either. That's the thing about free will. Even at an individual or a collective basis, we have the free will of being able to shift completely over into different timelines that are going to make the events look different in every timeline to a certain degree, right? So I don't really like when people are like, this is exactly what's going to happen, especially in today's world. I mean, maybe that was easier to do, 50 years ago, but at the same point, it's become so much more expansive. And again, talking that new earth, old earth energy, if you haven't watched that video, please go watch it. Because I do speak a lot about how that split's happening and that energetic split's happening. And so there's almost always going to be kind of like that two sides of the coin going forward for a good while yet, into especially 26 and probably part of 27, just depending again where the collective energy seems to head. So it'll be sort of like this notion of understanding, like, there's always going to be kind of two sides of the story, and there may be probabilities that kind of follow two paths, that could be kind of polar opposites of each other as well. So when these predictions are kind of given, it's not to say that it's ever going to be 100%, right? Because it can't ever be 100%, because there's no guarantee of like writing it in the sand of being like, this is 100% going to happen, because we have the capability of shifting timelines and following a different energy pattern, and that's going to create different events. So with Baba Vanga, she maybe has had a lot of predictions from way back when, but you'll see in some of those lists that some of them have not come true at all. Or different timelines maybe are in existence for certain pieces of that. Like, one of the examples was the prediction of World War III, that you will see that she has actually had called that prior. And now some people were interpreting, well, maybe it was just the year she had wrong. Maybe she was not interpreting the year. And then now some are saying, oh, well, she did predict it for 2026. So there is a little bit of back and forth. But again, if you haven't listened to the glitch in the matrix episode, I mean, go listen to that video as well, because that, or video, or if you're hearing this on Spotify or Apple, go listen to that podcast episode, because in those episodes, we're also, exploring the glitches and realities. And that can also be a thing too. So maybe some people are remembering that she had predicted it for a different year, and some are actually saying, no, 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 she predicted it for 2026. Now, there's nothing to argue against each other with that, because those are just the reality shifts, right? I mean, and that's the thing, that's the glitches in the matrix, where it's a little bit of that Mandela effect. So you want more information on the glitches, go listen to that episode. But that's sort of where those predictions and prophecies have to remember, like, it's not about necessarily the exact events and the date and the year. It's the fact that that's what felt the strongest in those moments in time when someone may have spoke that forward. Now, some people may be thinking too, well, there's ancient prophecies for the existence of our earth. Well, again, those ancient prophecies have been interpreted by humans, or they've been interpreted from their source of understanding from that individual perspective. So it doesn't necessarily mean that ancient prophecies aren't necessarily, there's some kind of truth to them, but they're up for interpretation. And I think that's really important to remember. So in general, this is just sort of knowing and thinking about prophecies in that way, and then recognizing that there is always an existence of a limitless timelines, limitless events that could happen when it comes to quote unquote prophecies. So it's a different when we're sort of looking at it from that perspective and looking, at the knowledge and understanding of what they are. But when we're seemingly actually living and what might actually have been a predicted prophecy or a prediction, from somebody well known, or just in the fact that we can feel this energy and this big shift has happened. And some people might be looking to put that on like a prophecy or prediction to make it more sense of it at a human level, which I totally get. That's what your brain is there to do. It's sort of there to make sense of reality that's playing out before us. But the thing is it can only make sense of the physical reality because that's all we've ever been taught. And so when we're constantly sort of looking to try and place this on something, but it becomes a very different dynamic. And I do believe Lee Harris mentioned something about living in a prophecy just recently. And it was funny because again, I'm already sort of on the prophecy term and thinking about this last couple days, and I didn't see his whole video. I just seen a little blurb under his description about sort of talking about how living in a prophecy is very different. And then again, my mind started to sort of put these energetic patterns in place and being like, it is very different because when we speak of them, it's one thing, right? It just seems to be knowledge or it seems to be conversational. But when we're in it, like quote unquote, let's say we're in a prophecy or a prediction that was made, it's not something that we usually put two and two together because the energy feels very different when we're living through these possible predictions or the things that might be going on. Like, let's take 9/11 for an example, just simply like people didn't put that prediction on 9/11 until after it happened, right? It was like, oh, it happened. But when we're in it, we don't think, oh my God, this prophecy or prediction is coming true, unless you're a person that's like highly following that on a regular basis. I mean, maybe your experience might be a little bit different, but your experience also is going to be probably a very different experience than you even thought it was going to be actually living in that space of that energy, right? Because when a prediction is given, and then all of a sudden we're living through these prophecies per se, um, it's highly intense and it can cause a lot more to happen rather than just that external event. So I mean, of course, Baba Vanga speaks on more of like obviously a worldly term, right? And it's not necessarily individualistic. But the thing is we're all playing a role within that prediction or that prophecy if we're here living through it as well. And I think that prediction for self and that way of understanding or trying to see from the larger level, because we only ever really associate a lot of those predictions and prophecies with the worldly things because that's often the ones you hear of. It can feel very disorienting sometimes for us as individuals because it's almost like now you're sort of glitching in the matrix a little between timelines and between shifts and realities and trying to figure out what is truthful and what's not truthful. And it becomes like this really sort of heavy, dense space to try and navigate. But doing that from a very human perspective would be very hard because we were never taught of the unseen world being the natural space for us to be in existence. So when we're moving through these spaces of prediction or something that's going on, it can be very disorienting and it can be very like, I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if this is this prediction real or is I like this a big dream? Like that's the sort of energy that can start to happen. And if you really think about even where we are right now, there's been a lot of people sort of thrown in through that chaos and then sort of having a hard time deciphering like what's reality, what's not reality. And I think those are the wrong questions, of course, to be asking ourselves because it's very human perspective of trying to put everything in a linear sense. But it's almost like that's exactly what living through prediction or prophecies of an exact timeline. And so it's like it's been sort of talked about, it's sort of been brought into the surface, but we think about it, we don't feel it. And when we're in it, you're feeling it all. And so it can be very disorienting and it can be very jumbled until you kind of take your own power back within yourself and recognize like it is all very real. All timelines exist. And at the same point, as a collective, we don't have truly full control as an individual, of course, where that's going to go. But what you can do is kind of start to see the bigger picture again. And maybe it's not to rely on the prophecy so much, but it's just to make truth for yourself within the situation. Because again, not everybody needs to be in the exact same reality. Um, and so it causes, again, for a lot of misconceptions or misunderstandings between people because we all think, oh, well, if I see it this way, then everybody else must as well. Not to say that, of course, you're not going to find the people that resonate with you, but at the same point is to recognize that it's not everybody's reality. And so in which when we're living through prosody or prediction times, like 26 is such a big year. And there has been a lot of predictions around 26 and even into 27. And so when we're living through these times, it's not to get too observed absorbed, sorry, into what has already been said, but it's to remember that you're searching for your truth within this as an individual. And at the same time, being able to understand that there is a larger picture here, that everybody is going to see a different side of the wall. And that's okay. So that prediction might be real or truthful for them in that sense, but it might not be for you in the sense maybe of how they present it. And again, that's okay. But it's also teaching us that reality is not a solid thing, and there's more than one timeline. So, in saying that, I would hope then that you can go forward, um, sort of thinking about this for yourself in a different way and feeling into it more too. Like, instead of just believing everything that a thought brings you, start believing yourself in the resonancy for you in that moment as well. Like, you know, worldly things are hard to resonate with sometimes, though, because it's hard not to get wrapped up in what is being said. And so I always tell people again, it's like, is a possibility there? Absolutely. Of course it's there. That prediction didn't come from anywhere. It is a timeline. It does exist. But it doesn't mean that it becomes a part of our actual physical reality in that moment. Yes or no. It could be either or, right? And if it does end up happening, like let's say 9/11, we often don't recognize that it has happened until after it's gone and passed anyway. So don't let yourself get too wrapped up in the prophecy or the predictions of all the things, because again, at that point when they were made, and with Baba Vanga especially, it's hard to put an actual timeline of exactly when she said these things, because so much of it has just been passed down, through story, or those things. And I'm sure there probably is like somewhat of a written form of it from originality. But there's also no saying in how that person might have interpreted her prophecies. I know some of them were written down word for word. I'm sure there is, but there's also, since that time, the internet didn't really exist back then, obviously. So we don't know for sure, exactly what those prophecies all were, or her terminology. I mean, you'll see a lot of what's online being interpreted already, saying that it's World War III or this or that, and maybe she did say those things to a certain degree again, but there might have been a lot more to it as well that never got into the rest of the prophecy or prediction, because maybe somebody just thought it was irrelevant, right? So again, it's not to take everything as like 100%, even with prophecy or prediction. And I mean, that's even in a religious sense as well. If something feels off, and you don't really resonate with it, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, a lot of religion has tried to say that there is, because, this is the man of God, or this is what has been said, and that is to be believed, right? But that's also a lot of fear baseline of not allowing people to choose their own truth from things. So if you're sitting here listening to this, and maybe you do have a bit more of that background of more of the religious side, I want to make sure that you understand that you are not crazy for kind of doubting or wanting to question, because it's a very natural part of ourselves, especially if we don't resonate with something. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of your own inner empowerment. People can't take that away from you, once you sort of recognize and know it's there, and you start trusting more of that than you do the external world. Because you're going to create a reality for yourself that resonates for you, and that's also within prophecy or prediction. But again, the worldly stuff is hard, because too many people want to get wrapped up in being like, oh my God, this is going to happen because somebody predicted it, and it's like, well, no, not necessarily. It could have, again, been interpreted in many different ways. So there you go. There's been my thought process a little bit in the last couple of days on prophecies and predictions, and I just thought it was kind of fascinating that it came up at this point in time, because it just is such a big point where we're at, and everything's, well, a lot of things are changing, right? So a lot of people are questioning things, and some people are going down that rabbit hole of trying to figure out who or what has been said, for this point in time in this part of the year. So, and again, someone mentioned online again too, and this is again, we're doing a little bit of research, and looking through and comparing, you'll see how much people have sort of switched it around, or said different things, because someone's also said about 2026, where Baba Vanga did say 2026 was going to be the year World War III started and extraterrestrial contact was going to happen. But we also know there has been a lot of that coming from intuitives as well, myself included, where 26, 20 into 27 was going to be where more extraterrestrial contact was going to happen. But again, that is up to interpretation, because some people want to think it's just going to be like this like big, loud, proud, and everybody's going to have the same experience. But that's also not the case. It's happening already. It has been for years, but the way people want to interpret that, they want to say it's from movies and the apocalyptic times are coming, and stuff like that. And again, that's part of Baba Vanga, where someone said, well, Baba Vanga said that it could throw us into a kind of like an apocalyptic state of being when, alien extraterrestrials made themselves known. But again, that was up for interpretation. Again, you have to remember, like, I don't even know if that was the year she predicted that for, because you'll find multiple different years associated with those things from quote unquote Baba Vanga, but that's also coming written from other people that may have done research or they may not have, right? Maybe they're just looking for clickbait and trying to get everybody on the same page. But again, you take what resonates best for you, whether it came from someone like Baba Vanga, who is very well known, or if it's someone even online, myself. I want you to take your resonancy from anything that's being said. And if you don't resonate with it, that's 100% okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. So go searching through your truth, through everything that comes up. And that just gives you a solid foundation moving forward as well. So have fun with looking into all these things, of course, if you would like to do that, but make sure you're following your truth. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.